If you watched my video about the pentatonic scale, you probably have a good sense of how to move the scale around and put it in different keys. If you don't know how to do that, I'll put that video somewhere around here. But maybe you've been trying to put a jam track on and you've just been going... That's not a solo, that's just a scale. How do you make it feel like a solo? Well, let's start from the beginning. We're going to talk about phrases first. If you don't totally get it, just hang on, or let me know in the comments and I'll try to make a more specific video about each of these things. Here we go. So, the first thing I want to talk about is just making phrases. What is a phrase? It's just a set of notes. If you're always starting at the beginning of the scale, and you're always moving this direction, it's going to sound the same a lot of the time. Pick any pick any spot in the scale and start from there and move in a different direction and maybe go 3 or 4 notes like this. So that's little groups of notes. Now let's make it a little more interesting. I like to think of having one weird quirk in there, a rhythmic thing where you're waiting to go, or you know, you could have just something to break up the rhythm so you're not just going, and you can experiment with, here's a set of 1, 2, 3, 4 notes. If I wait after the first note, that feels like a little phrase all of a sudden. If I wait after the second note, that's nice. If I wait, you feel how that kind of starts to feel a little bit like music. So just one little different rhythm thing will make a big difference. The way I like to think about arranging phrases is having A phrases, B phrases, and C phrases. Your A phrase is just the phrase you start with. So this could be my A phrase. There you go, nice. A B phrase is going to be like your A phrase, but a little different. And what I like about A and B phrases is your A phrase sets you up for your B. It feels like you can almost predict what's going to happen. Here's what I mean. If I play an A phrase, and then I start my B phrase the same way, but then I end on a different note, something in our brains is like, oh, I thought that was going to be the same, but it was just similar. It's like in a book when you have character development. You want to feel like that's something that character would do. So here's A phrase. If you've never played a solo before, and you've only been practicing scales, this is still not going to feel like you're totally playing a solo, but it is going to feel melodic. And I think every solo that you like has some melodic content to it. And what I mean by that is it has little phrases that feel related, and then phrases that kind of break up that relatedness so it doesn't sound repetitive. So here's what I'm talking about. If I set up a classic kind of ABAC type of thing, in terms of phrases, not notes, I'm not playing ABAC, that would be notes. I'm just labeling these phrases, my A phrase, my B phrase, and my C phrase. So A is the one you start with, B is the one that's similar, and then C is the one that's different. So if I do something like ABAC, it'll sound like this. Right? It just feels melodic. It feels nice. What I want to do today is mainly talk about some different ways to get B phrases. A C phrase, not necessarily easy, but a C phrase is easier to think about because you just have to try to be different than what you did before. We'll come to that more a little bit later. But what I want to talk about here is a set of things you can do to create B phrases. So the example I was using here was I was changing a note. And in this case, I was changing the last note. A phrase, B phrase. Different note. I could create another B phrase and go. It's all just about creating something similar. I could also start on a different note. I could go A. I could go. That's not as nice, but it's still different. In this case, I just started on this note, and then since that note was next, I ended up just playing it twice. So still feels cohesive. So I could change a note in the middle and go like that. So that is called changing a note. You could also add a note. So if I'm going and then I go, that's nice. You could also subtract a note. So I like I like subtracting a note because it catches you off guard. You're expecting that next note to happen, it doesn't, and it's kind of nice. Let me try with a different phrase. My C phrase there was just something different. And a little note about C phrases is they work really well if you tend to go in the opposite direction as you were going before. So here I'm going down the scale here, and my C phrase goes up. I'm not going to sing it for you. The next thing you can think about with making B phrases is you can also flip the phrase. So, itchy, allergy season, flipping a phrase. So if I'm going, I'm going to try playing it in the opposite direction, but I'm going to keep that same da-da-da-da-da kind of rhythm. So I've got, that feels really nice. If I go, that's kind of cohesive. And the whole point of A and B phrases is that you're creating little cohesive bits. Pause for a second. What's also nice about A and B phrases is you don't have to come up with something new. You just have to take whatever you just did and do a little different. I love it. It's great. So the next thing I want to talk about, there's a fancy word for it, and that is diatonic transposition. But the basic word for it is relocating. You're taking the phrase, playing it somewhere else. So if I'm going, then I can go, notice I'm staying in the pentatonic shape, but I'm just kind of keeping the same rhythm and the same distance between strings. If I do a phrase where I skip a string, then I could do the same kind of string skip from here to here. I could go, so now I've got, Now you notice a lot of this stuff feels kind of riffy. That's because this is the stuff people use to make melodies. You start with a phrase, and then you do something related. It just feels nice. I'll put up like kind of a list of ABAC, AABC, ABBAC, roughly sets of 4. You never want to repeat things 3 times you can get away with, but I would stray away from 3 times and stick with playing something 2 times before people kind of go, oh, I'm bored. But at least you can play something 2 times, right? That's nice. Let's talk a little more about C phrases. So if I'm going, a C phrase, like that one was just kind of like a period, just like, yep. A lot of times C phrases are kind of like a little throwaway, like you want them to be different. If I'm going like this, I'm just going somewhere else and doing something different. Notice I did the same thing twice there. Basically, it's kind of almost like 2 little mini C's. It's really just about doing something different. It's not exactly soloing, but it's practicing the pieces involved in soloing. So if I throw in a jam track, I'll give you a link to it. It's in the key of C or A minor. You're using this pentatonic shape at the 5th fret. So the idea is, if you start a phrase anywhere, how about here? There we go. So that's my A phrase now, so I gotta go. ABAC. Where do we go? ABAC. What if I go A? ABAC. You could also try AABC or, you know, any of the other things on the list. If you want a much looser way to practice, you can do what I like to call explore, morph, reset. And so you're exploring, you're just finding an A phrase, find one you like, and then morph it as much as you think you can get away with. Maybe go through the whole list of, you know, flipping it around. Then you can reset it by playing a C phrase that's different, and that C phrase will probably set you off to explore. And it's very sloppy and very loose. I should also mention that whole list of morphs you can do, you can kind of combine them. You can shorten and change notes. You can diatonic transpose and change notes. You can also diatonic transpose and flip the phrase around. The whole point of this, if it feels too messy, all you're trying to do is get ideas for how to create another phrase, and instead of just having to think of something cool all over again, you just kind of play around with what you already have, and it turns into this big thing, and it's really nice. I'll give you a little sample of explore, morph, reset right now. So here we go. I'm going to explore. I like that. I'm going to morph that one a little bit. So we go. I got bored, so I reset it there. Just exploring. Ooh. I like that. Exploring. Oh, that's nice. I just reset that with some weird stuff. No, I didn't like that. Anyways, I think you get the idea.